Welcome, curious minds. Today we're diving into the world of one of history's biggest brains, Sir Isaac Newton. You might know him as the guy who got bonked on the head by an apple and figured out gravity. Sir Isaac was brilliant. Like, I figured out how to predict the future of the universe. Kind of brilliant. His work on gravity, optics, and calculus set the foundation for modern physics. You know, typical nerd stuff. But did you know he had a fascination with the occult? That's right. The same guy who gave us the laws of motion dabbled in alchemy and other shadowy practices. Let's go into this crazy ride through science and sorcery. Wow. Where do we even start with Isaac Newton and his alchemical adventures? I mean, we all know him as the gravity guy, right? But he had this whole secret life dabbling in alchemy that was, let's just say, a bit more mystical than you'd expect from a guy who could describe the laws of motion. Isaac Newton and the Philosopher's fiasco. Isaac Newton, the man who gave us gravity, calculus, and a lifetime of headache-inducing equations, had a lesser-known hobby: alchemy. Yes, the same alchemy that involved turning lead into gold and brewing potions for immortality. Because, apparently, discovering the laws of motion just wasn't enough excitement for one lifetime. Newton's apprenticeship in mystery. It's the late 1600s. And that young Newton is boarding in the attic of an apothecary's shop, probably surrounded by all kinds of herbs and strange potions. At just 12, he's already knee-deep in alchemical theories, which sounds pretty fascinating, but also like a recipe for a science experiment gone wrong. While most kids his age were busy getting scolded for not doing their chores, Newton was sneaking into the shop, mesmerized by bubbling potions, strange symbols, and the occasional explosion, which, to be fair, was probably his fault. Alchemy back then was like the Wild West of science, full of mysterious terminology and the occasional rogue practitioner promising to turn lead into gold. Yikes. In England wasn't just a quirky hobby. It was downright illegal. The Crown wasn't a fan of people claiming to make gold, mostly because it feared financial chaos from an army of rogue alchemists suddenly cranking out counterfeit coins. The punishment for unauthorized alchemy: public hanging, on a gilded scaffold no less. The English really knew how to make an execution extra fancy. Imagine being hanged on a gilded scaffold. Talk about dramatic and such over-the-top opulence. Now, Newton's relationship with alchemy is a bit of a tangled web. He was reportedly on a quest for the elusive Philosopher's Stone, the magical rock that supposedly turned base metals into gold and granted immortality. Pretty ambitious, yeah? He even had this wild idea that metals had a sort of life, thanks to his experiments that produced some stunning dendritic silver growths. It's like he was part scientist, part wizard, a lab full of secrets, and maybe a few accidents. As you might know, history books don't always tell the full story. Much of Newton's alchemical work may have been lost in a fire, sparked, no pun intended, by his beloved dog, Diamond. It said he lamented, "O Diamond, Diamond, thou little knowest the mischief thou hast done," which sounds straight out of a Shakespearean tragedy. Shakespeare would have wept over that drama. Newton's lab was a chaotic wonderland of half-melted metals, smoky flasks, and enough hazardous materials to keep a modern safety inspector awake at night. Unfortunately, one of his most promising notebooks, and possibly some of his greatest discoveries, was destroyed in the mysterious fire. Now, whether this was a tragic accident or Newton accidentally spilled a little too much of an experimental potion on his desk, history remains unclear. Newton wasn't just dabbling in alchemy. He was obsessed. He filled notebooks with cryptic writings about hidden substances, mysterious elixirs, and experiments that likely left his hair singed more than once. However, his biggest goal, the Philosopher S-Stone, a legendary substance said to turn base metals into gold and grant eternal life. Because if you're already the most brilliant scientist in England, why not aim for immortality? While you're at it, rumors say that during this period, Newton suffered a nervous breakdown. To be fair, spending years trying to create gold, only to end up with burnt fingers and no actual treasure, would drive anyone a little mad. So while Newton was hard at work figuring out gravity, he was also trying to unlock the secrets of the cosmos through his esoteric experiments. Talk about multitasking. The Royal Society's secret alchemist. Despite his best efforts to keep his alchemical escapades under wraps, Newton was a member of the Royal Society, where men like Robert Boyle were pioneering real chemistry. Boyle, who had already laid down the foundations of modern chemistry, probably looked at Newton's hidden alchemical notes and thought, "Really, Isaac? Philosopher's Stone? Maybe our genius believed that understanding the universe required not just rational thinking, but a sprinkle of magic dust." Imagine a scientific paper instructing students to prove gravity. Please add 3 drops of unicorn tears. Look out! Here comes the magic students with their enchanted calculators. Naturally, Newton, who was not a fan of criticism or public humiliation, kept most of his findings unpublished. After all, if he was already getting into heated arguments over calculus, he definitely didn't want to be grilled about magical elixirs. After Newton kicked the bucket, his manuscripts passed through various hands, with some getting tossed aside as unfit for publication. In the 1936 auction, some of those manuscripts finally saw the light of day, and they included some juicy tidbits about his search for that Philosopher's Stone. There's even a connection to the notorious Nicolas Flamel. Yes, the guy from Harry Potter fame. Flamel was legendary for his supposed alchemical prowess and was linked to all kinds of mystical texts. It's wild to think that Newton was collecting works associated with figures that have become legends in their own right. So, while we might not have Newton's recipe for immortality, not that it worked, obviously, we do have something better: physics, calculus, and the occasional reminder that even geniuses have their weird side. Who knows? If Newton had cracked the secret of the Philosopher's Stone, we might be using it to fuel spaceships instead of rocket fuel. So the next time you're pondering the mysteries of the universe, remember, science can be a bit magical. Or maybe it's just Newton's inner wizard rearing its head. Thanks for joining us on this whimsical journey into Newton's mind. Until next time, remember to keep your potions safe and your apples close.